The official motive for the deadly mass shootings at a gay nightclub in Colorado this past weekend, not known, but the shooting has the debate over hate as front and center. On the Kogo News Live line, Steve Dinkin, he is the president of the San Diego-based National Conflict Resolution Center. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about hate, because the word gets thrown around a lot in conversation, especially politically. But when it comes down to it, is there some underlying hatred for gays or Asians or any other group in America on the whole?
I've been running the National Conflict Resolution Center for now almost 20 years, and in this role, I've never seen this level of division in society. And what I'm sensing is that we are increasingly polarized as a community, as a society, and that is translating into the types of hate that we're experiencing, whether it is based on race or anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or the anti-Asian sentiment, or even what's happened recently with LGBTQ issues.
So at this point, how do we unpolarize? It seems like if you're on the left or on the right, the idea is that we just vilify each other instead of talking to each other.
What's tending to happen as we are becoming more polarized, that we end up just staying within our own silos. We tend to remain with people who just look like yourself. And so we're seeing that, for example, on college campuses where there are multiple different clubs and organizations, and each student just stays within their club. And what's critical is that people need to break out of those silos and start to interact with people that look different than themselves and have opportunities to have those conversations, possibly to disagree, but still to be engaged so people become more sensitive to others' perspectives. So there's not that sense of othering. And we're seeing that at the National Conflict Resolution Center, where there's this increased sense of othering, that people, you just perceive them for being intrinsically different than yourself because you don't have the opportunity to interact with them.
So let's talk a little bit about politicians, because politics seems to be playing a rather large role in this polarization. It's Team A against Team B, and Team B is just horrible, terrible people. They're awful. They're, the worst things that ever crawled out of the primordial ooze. And do we need our politicians to step up and just be better people and maybe a little bit nicer to one another?
Yeah, the real question is, are the politicians just a reflection of society? We are voting those individuals into power, but on the other hand, then once they are in power, they do have a certain responsibility to act reasonably, because we're looking at them as role models. So it is incumbent upon them to not use the type of rhetoric that really flames all of these tensions in society. And I think with the recent midterm elections, and as we move into the presidential elections, if the politicians are flaming the situation with their rhetoric, it's going to destabilize the country, and people who are having, let's say, mental health issues or people who are vulnerable, those are the ones that are going to seize upon those words and potentially commit these terrible acts of violence.
Well, I think the question that most people have is, what in the world can I do? If you're one of those people who seems to be sort of stuck in the middle of the road with dead armadillos, kind of wishing that each side would tone it down a little bit, what can the average person do?
So I think about this as it's really a multifaceted approach to addressing this level of hate and violence in our society. I mean, there's sort of the mental health issues, gun control issues, social media. You mentioned the political issues. But for us, it really comes down to communication. And as an individual, just as a person in society, I think we can, rather than just being a bystander, we can become upstanders. And when we see situations at the earliest instance where people are treating others with disrespect in the workplace, in the community, wherever you are situated, at the very first instance when you see this behavior, become an upstander. Step in and say, wow, what you just said, that was really inappropriate. And let them know that that behavior is not acceptable. You don't necessarily have to embarrass that person in the moment, but just put them on notice, and then maybe the next day have a private conversation with that individual who's in your club or at the workplace and say, that type of behavior, is not appropriate. And you need to be more respectful if you're going to be part of this organization or part of our working group. So I think each of us can become, rather than bystanders, move to becoming upstanders.
Stephen Diggin, president of the San Diego-based National Conflict Resolution Center. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.